You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Haunted Histories with your host Penny G. Morgan, right here on Parasearch Radio.
Good evening, one and all, and welcome to another episode. Fact-filled and full of fun Parasearch Haunted History show. You should know who I am by now, but if not, I'm Penny G. Morgan, and you'll be listening to me for about the next hour or so. Last week we were joined by the incredibly funny and very generous with his time, Mr. Dalen Spratt of TV's Ghost Brothers. Oh, he was so lovely. We talked about the former home of Sarah Winchester, the Winchester Mansion in San Jose, California. Hi, Kerry. If for whatever reason you're unable to catch the show, don't worry. It's ready and waiting for you on both YouTube and Spreaker. Just click on the link and get ready to hear me. Just get ready to hear me cackling with laughter at the lovely Dalen and some of the things he was saying. It was genuine laughter and it wasn't flirting. Oh, maybe a little bit. Hi, Kaz. Hopefully Dalen and his other two ghost brothers will be back on Haunted Histories later in the year. I have a feeling that I will be laughing the whole time trying to control an interview with all three of them. But enough of that. What about tonight? Who are we talking with? Well, I was lucky enough to do an investigation with these guys the weekend past, and I can honestly say it was a superbly organised event, and I would definitely give these guys 5 stars if I could. It's the one, the only, Simply Ghost Nights, and their founders and owners, the absolutely gorgeous Stuart and Rosey Dawson. The place we were investigating was Gressenhall Workhouse in Norfolk. And I would say the Dawsons could be perhaps seen as workhouse gurus, as they are also the resident team at Ripon Workhouse. So what I thought we would do is look at both and see if there are any parallels in activity. And not just that, with Ripon recently opening up more of the original building to the public, what other things have occurred since we spoke to them about there early last year? Hi Mark, thanks for joining us. Hi Richard. How does that sound? Good? Cool. So, on to Gressenhall. Well, it was originally known as Mitford and Launditch House of Industry, and this was formed on the 7th of July 1777. Now, I thought this was quite interesting. Hi, Danny. Anyone with a knowledge of numerology, or perhaps even seeing patterns, might find all the 7s quite unusual. Did you know, and I looked this up, that the number 7 is meant to symbolise perfection, security, safety and rest? Did you know that? Now, whether people entering the workhouse back in 1777, that is a bit of a tongue twister, I tell you, felt that kind of security and safety and everything else, I have absolutely no idea. But you can hope that they felt some kind of security. At least they had a roof over their heads and some kind of food, even if it is something that today's society would possibly look at with, well, revulsion. I'm not going to go into the poor laws and all of that too heavily, as if that is something that I covered quite a lot in my show on Ripon earlier in this year. So if it is something you're interested in learning more about, go back on Spreaker or YouTube, find the Ripon show and listen to my history blurb on that bit. Or if you really, really want to know, drop me a mail and I'll have a chat with you. Life in the workhouse was very controlled, depending on what time of year it was. You would either rise at 6 a.m. or about 6:45 a.m, obviously 6:45 being the winter rising hours, with breakfast of normally either broth or bread and cheese half an hour later, and leaving to work an hour after you rose. Dinner was meat or sometimes peas porridge. Hi, Simon. Or something similar to that. Meat was only consumed on alternate days. You never had meat on the same day. And that would be served between 12 and 1, and then it was back to work until 6 p.m. Supper, shortly after 6 p.m. Pretty much the same food as breakfast, but alternating. So if you had broth one day, you'd have bread and cheese for your supper that day, if that makes sense. And then bedtime was at 8 p.m. When looking at the sample menus in some of the history books, and actually at the museum, Gressenhall specifically, because I was there this weekend, just gone, so I do actually remember, the men and normally the women as well would be allowed a pint of beer twice a day. Now, this may seem quite a pleasant reason for anyone who enjoys a tipple to be in a workhouse, but the reason behind it was for no reason other than it was cheap and it was a good alternative to local water supplies, which could be less than palatable at times. Hi, Michelle. Now, Mitford and Launditch became a union workhouse in May 1836 after the Poor Law Act of 1834. The aim of the poor unions was to amalgamate parishes into a union for the purpose of regulating the poor and needy, and also to provide a more centralised approach. As before, something in the region of 1 in 6 parishes provided some kind of workhouse for the poor, and had to fund many out of their own pockets. Mitford and Launditch included parishes such as, anyone who knows Norfolk, these might ring a bell, Bordeswell, Dereham, Gressenhall, Twyford and Yaxham. All in all, nearly 60 different parishes in total were part of this specific poor union that was for Gressenhall. And thanks for joining us, Michelle. I do hope you enjoy your first time. In 1853, the workhouse expanded to include quarters for well-behaved elderly couples to live together. It doesn't take a genius to work out why couples of childbearing age were separated, however, with male and female quarters. And if you need me to explain, I think you may need a few biology lessons. The workhouse had quite a few orphan children, illegitimate children, and also abandoned families to deal with. The last thing they really needed was more hungry mouths to feed. But they realised that there was no harm, and it was probably better for the welfare of elderly couples to be together. In fact, if you visit Cherry Tree Cottage at the museum, this was part of the cottages built to accommodate this change. Now, I mentioned illegitimate children. Well, it wasn't until 1866 that any unmarried mothers arriving at Gressenhall and other workhouses, it wasn't the only one, had to wear a distinctive jacket or item of clothing to distinguish them from the other women. A badge of shame, I guess it was intended to be. I remember from visiting the Thackeray Museum in Leeds, which was originally part of the Leeds workhouse, women there had to wear a yellow jacket if they were parent to a fatherless child. In fact, if you look at the workhouse records for Mitford and Launditch, which I was looking at researching for this show, and others, it really, really isn't unique to this one particular union. The word bastard is put next to quite a few children's names. And I don't think it's for the same reasons that other people might call their children now. If you look at the 1881 census of the area, and I will admit I have to thank the workhouse expert, Mr. Peter Higginbottom, as I read his material on workhouses and poor laws very thoroughly, as his knowledge is second to none. There were about 160 individuals listed as being at Mitford and Launditch at that point in the census of 1881, although it has to be said that some of these were staff, including porters, teachers, and the workhouse master and matron. Life continued at the workhouse, but this one at Gressenhall was a bit different, as it was built around a farm. Not all inmates, and yes, they were known as inmates, worked on the farm. Some did oakum picking, some worked in the laundry, the women, obviously, but many did work at the farm. Again, if you look at workhouse records, a person's occupation is listed. And for many, farm labourer was listed. Now, these are the Gressenhall records I'm talking about. So what better work to get them to do than one which they already know? It's believed that Mitford and Laundage was one of the only poor unions to actually make money, as any surplus produce not used by the workhouse that was supplied by the farm was actually sold on. Unfortunately, a lot of this is very hard to verify with records, as the Norfolk Records Office, where many of the documents were kept, was destroyed during World War II. Even worse, in the early to mid-90s, Norwich Library was destroyed by fire, and this did actually include some antique records that were being kept there. Now, no matter how abhorrent you may think workhouse life was, looking at it with modern eyes, it wasn't slave labour. You could not be seen to be encouraged. It was not the done thing to be encouraged to go into the workhouse. It was meant to be your absolute last resort, which is why some of the stories that you can read at the museum make it all the more heartbreaking. The farm labourer whose wife died, and he had to place his youngest children in the workhouse so that he could keep the rest of the family out and carry on working. The women placed there because they had mental health problems and the family could not look after her. The elderly couple who could not work any longer and had nobody to support them. The woman with 6 children who was deserted by her husband and had no means by which to pay her way. Where would these people have been without the workhouse? Well, probably on the streets, living in hedgerows, or even dead, in all honesty. No, it wasn't a hotel. It wasn't meant to be. One of those things, the things with history that many people do, is they look at it with their modern eyes. Of course, we would think that the way they were expected to live was verging on slavery now, but all it was a very early method of the welfare state. But what it wasn't was a prison. You could leave. In fact, it was easier to leave than enter. There weren't many rules for leaving, other than if you were a man with a family, you all had to go. He couldn't just dump his wife and children in the workhouse and desert them. But other than that, 3 hours' notice, and you could leave. Normally. Hi Cassie, hi Rosey. Now, I have my own family story of the workhouse, or really, the lengths people went to avoid it, and I only found out this story a couple of years ago. My great-grandmother had 3 children when her husband died in his very early 30s. They had lived in a house owned by the steelworks, where he was employed up in the northeast. Within 24 hours of his death, she was evicted from the property. Destitute, with 3 small children, I think under the age of 6, one being my actual grandfather, and with no one really to rely on, my great-grandmother went to the poor union to ask for a loan to get herself set up. She apparently, as family folklore tells, or as I found out, was so disgusted at how she was meant to pretty much grovel for money, she went and got a job as a housekeeper for a middle-class single man who had lost his wife, thereby securing both work and a roof over her head for both her and her 3 children. It's true. So you were discouraged from asking for help, asking for alms. And yes, she ended up marrying him and having 2 more children. There you go. In 1917, the east wing of the building was used to house around 50 German prisoners of war. How many of those stayed after 1918 is not known, but most were repatriated back to Germany in 1919. What else happened at Mitford, however? Well, it did become known as Gressenhall eventually in 1930, and then in 1948 it shut its doors as a workhouse and became a home for the elderly. Although many still remembered it as a workhouse and were reluctant to go there. Understandable, perhaps. In 1975, it closed those doors as a facility completely and was taken over by the Friends of Gressenhall and started its transition into the museum that you see now. I knew you'd pick up on that, Richard. I knew you would pick up on that. I was waiting, I was watching the comments and I was thinking, Richard is going to pick up on the fact a man can't put his wife and children and desert them into the workhouse. You're too predictable, mate. You've got to come up with something new. Anyway, even if the paranormal side isn't really your bag, which I will be chatting to Rosey and Stuart about shortly, as a museum, it really is a fascinating place. And if I haven't managed to challenge any misconceptions about the workhouse that you may have, go and have a look at the exhibits, as it really explains the social repercussions and the impacts of these facilities. Right, let's take a quick 30-second break, and then we can hear the interview with my friends the Dawsons. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?
Right. Now, we are joined by two good friends of mine, the Dawsons of Simply Ghost Nights, Rosey and Stuart. How are you doing, guys?
We're very well, thanks,
Yes,
Penny.
thank you, Penny.
Have you missed me?
Very much.
Because
We've
it's
not
been at
seen
least
you for ages.
it's 36 hours.
I know.
It was nice to put a face to the voice as well.
Ditto. If anyone hasn't actually read the intro to this show properly, you won't realise that I was actually investigating Gressenhall Workhouse with Stuart, Rosey and their team, Simply Ghost Nights, on Saturday night, hence the joking about the fact were they missing me because they only left me at sort of 2 o'clock on Sunday morning. So we all had safe drives back to our respective homes. And now we're ready to talk to you about what happened at Gressenhall. But first, anyone who listens to my show regularly will know that Simply Ghost Nights are the resident investigative team at Ripon Workhouse in North Yorkshire, another amazing building and a beautiful market town, it has to be said, Ripon. But Ripon Workhouse has undergone some changes recently in that back in October time,
Yes, that was right. Yeah, at that time.
Yep, they acquired some more of what would have been the original workhouse building from, I think it was the local authority had been using it, hadn't they, or something, as an office block.
It was.
And this was the dormitories and the vagrants block originally, is that correct?
The block what we had originally to use was the vagrants block.
Yeah.
The new block what we've just received now, what we're using now, is where the male and the females would have slept, worked, eaten, all that kind of area.
Okay. So, how many investigations have you done there now in the new bit?
In the new bit, we've done 4 investigations up to now.
Okay. And what sort of things have you discovered that you'd not discovered before when you'd investigated the original part that the museum was originally in?
I think I was a little bit surprised at how well the governor's house would have been, because they've restored his part of the building, so you would have seen exactly what kind of lifestyle he would have had, which is very lavish.
Yeah.
And how small the areas are actually, where they would have had numerous beds in dormitory style for the poor people to sleep in.
Yeah.
It really surprised me how small the areas were, to be honest with you. I mean, don't get me wrong, they are big for us to investigate, but when you think about how many people that would have had sleeping in these rooms at the time, they're quite small.
When you look at it from the social history perspective and sort of, because would they have had, I don't know if they've got the display yet there of the beds, but they had beds that were kind of a V shape so that they could fit more together.
Oh, no,
I've seen the photos, but not...
They haven't actually got as far as the bedrooms yet in the refurbishments, but that is work in progress.
Yeah.
They've done amazing in the couple of months that they've had it. They've got the whole ground floor finished.
Right.
And it looks absolutely amazing. It's like stepping back in time. It really does teach kids, how to appreciate what they've got today.
Yeah.
And they often do these days where, in the school holidays, where you can take your kids, and they do take them back in time and teach them, this is what you would have done when you were 5 years old if you'd have been here.
Yeah.
I think the children, I mean, they do enjoy it, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they'd enjoy it if they knew that's how they had to live for the rest of their lives.
Well, you're saying that when being a bit of a history nerd myself. I am trying to indoctrinate my children into the ways of appreciating history and all those things as you'd probably expect. And I was driving down to Norfolk from Essex a few months ago, and when you drive along the A140 into Norfolk, you go past what would have been the old Puller Market workhouse.
Right.
And it's quite an imposing building, probably a similar size to Gressenhall that we're going to talk about shortly, maybe slightly bigger.
Right.
And I was explaining to he would have been 8. He's still 8 now, so he would have been 8 by then. I was explaining to him who would have gone to live there and everything. And I pointed out to him that because he was more than 7 years old, if we'd had to go in there because we had no money and we couldn't afford rent and we had nowhere to live, he wouldn't have been able to stay with me. He would have been sent off into the boys' wing.
Block, yeah.
And he sort of said, what about my brother? And his brother's 4. And I said, no, he could have stayed with me until he was 7, and then he would have been separated. And he thought it was really unfair that he wasn't allowed to see his mum. And thinking about it now, and you think about now a 7-year-old, it's quite daunting. It is, yeah. I mean, he was also quite shocked that Mummy and Daddy wouldn't be allowed to stay together, which I was explaining that to him as well. So I think that kind of thing, it's good for children to learn. It is good for them to learn the history, and I think things like the workhouse movement, especially for younger children, is glossed over a little bit too much because it seemed to be, we don't do things like that anymore, and and as I said in my earlier history bit, we look at history. So a lot of people look at history with modern eyes, whereas if you look at it with the eyes that they would have had back then, there was only 2 options sometimes: go in the workhouse or die. And as sad as it is, I think learning about it is quite a good sort of way to understand where we are now. Yeah. But so he was quite shocked when I pointed out to him that at 8 years old he would have been expected to be with just all the other children. Yeah. Full day's work. Or going to school for 3 or 4 hours and then working in the afternoon, and he found that quite shocking. To be honest, he was quite surprised. So I think things like that are brilliant, absolutely brilliant to teach kids. So what's been some of the memorable activity that you've had in the new block?
Well, in the new block, we've had, before we even went in, one of the staff had made me aware of something that had happened to her. This would be Dreen, who works there. She was sat at the bottom of the stairs, just welcoming guests as they came in to look around, when she felt a hand firmly go on her shoulder.
Right.
And she turned around to see who it was, and there wasn't a single person at all anywhere near her in the building.
Right.
And I didn't tell anybody about it, but on our first night that we did it, I purposely placed a table and chairs where it had happened, and we thought we'll do a vigil there. So I didn't tell anybody what had happened. We just sat down, started the vigil, when suddenly one of the ladies jumped up. She'd felt a hand go firmly on her shoulder. And I was so pleased that it happened. I thought, yes, it must be true. You know what I mean? It's happened again.
Yeah.
And Dreen, the lady who told me about it, tells me every time we go up, there's more and more reports daily, because people are going round the workhouse for a look through the daytime, unaware that it's even haunted, not giving that a second thought. And things are happening to them as they're walking round through the daytime.
Yeah.
Stuff happening all the time.
Yeah.
If you go in the workhouse, there's a back staircase, and there's a piece of paper up there with some news about this staircase, which is now behind a glass wall. You're not allowed to go up this staircase. It's encased in glass.
Right.
But apparently a lady called Harriet hung herself on the staircase. This is documented on the wall. And there was one night the group was in there with a ovulus, and they were just calling out, can you tell us your name? And the name Harriet came up on the ovulus.
Wow.
What else have we had in there?
Surprisingly, we usually get a character called Stan from the old Vagrants block.
I think Penny's heard about
We've
Stan.
We've heard about Stan, yeah.
He's made an appearance as well at the new building as well, the new block.
Ah, he's missed you at the old block, so he's come over.
Yeah, via the spirit box, surprisingly enough, yeah.
So he's brought his potty mouth over there now.
Actually, yeah. in the welcome room. So, what's your name? We all clearly heard Stan. And obviously later on a few F's and
Jeffs.
Yeah, F's and Jeffs were said.
But that's just to name a few. We also wear, like a lanyard with our name on the front, on the chest. Sometimes the team were sat doing a vigil one night and the whole group witnessed the lanyard lift up and spin round at least 4 times while we just sat there on the table. It lifted right up and spun round, not spun round 4 times, but individually 4 times. It was crazy, honestly. This one night, every group was having some amazing activity. The equipment going off in every area.
Cat balls as well, didn't they? They moved as well.
Yeah.
They moved about 2 foot on a carpet on a flat level floor as well.
Wow. That certainly sounds like it's... I suppose, though, because it had been an office block, it's not like it's been derelict for the last 30 years. It has had people in it constantly, so there has been something feeding. And I suppose in a way as well, the amount of electrical equipment that would have been in there with computers, and there's been stuff for them to absorb as well. So
going on down to footfall as well. People go through the door on a daily basis. They're providing their energy. School trips as well. This is their energy.
This is another thing. What happened the very last time we did an event there? We just started the welcome meeting. And Jez, our guy who does the tech, he was telling them all about the equipment. And he says, we might well get a visit from Stan. And they're like, Stan? Who's Stan? And he was just explaining, Stan's the potty mouth who comes over from Vagrant's block. And all of a sudden, the fire alarm went off. And we went to reset it. And every time we reset it, we're going off again. So we phoned the curator, and he said, there's no reason why it should be going off. It's not even connected. So we had to disable it for the night.
Isolated it.
We had to isolate it for the night, and they still do not know why. It's never gone off before, and it's never gone off since. But that night, just as he got on about Stan, the fire alarm just kept going off.
So what we're going to do next time we're there is we're going to say Stan's name again and see if we get another response.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like he's definitely attached to you guys. Not in an attachment way, but you get what I mean? He's attached to you as in...
He likes the limelight.
Obviously. Obviously.
They're all thespians, aren't they, these spirits? They all like to make their presence known and make us all aware.
You'd think, wouldn't you? But if we get on to Gressenhall now, where we were this weekend, talking about spirits making their presence known, they do... The ones we seem to have at Gressenhall did seem to want more of an active audience.
Yes. And this is something we find on events. If we have some groups that come and they tend to be a bit quiet. Now, we had 4 groups at Gressenhall this night. 3 groups had an amazing time. They were buzzing, to be honest with you, full of energy, willing to participate and call out, and they had a good night. And what this other group found, sadly, was because they were quiet and they weren't as active as the other groups. They didn't get as much activity as the other groups. Yeah. But they did get some things happen.
Oh, we did, because I was with them the whole night. It was the group that I was with, and they did start to get things that I know as a sort of probably a more tenured investigator, I could see that that's a bit strange. I mean, some of the things that we experienced, we did hear when we were in the boardroom at the beginning. We heard a door slam.
Yes.
And there was nobody else around, because Hannah went off to check. And there was nobody else around. We did I went off on my own for a while after that, so I'm not sure what they found happening in the boardroom after I'd gone off on my own. But I went off to where it'd be where the bell was kept, and as I was sort of sitting there near there, I could see the room getting darker and darker and colder. But my sort of and there was some tapping, knocking noises which I couldn't explain. But the most interesting one I had, and I've actually got it on my digital recorder, is I was calling out some of the names of the people that their displays were all around the museum.
Right.
And when I called out the name Anna, I heard a very distinct tap on one of the pipes after I said the name, and I said again, thanks for that. Is that Anna? Tap, tap, tap. Okay, Anna, you want to talk to me? Tap, 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 tap. And unfortunately, as I walked towards where I thought the sound was coming from, it disappeared. But it was a case that I did wonder if it was the heating pipes sort of flexing. But that's when I think Martin came round with some of the others and sort of said, well, no, the heating's not been on.
As we all felt.
It's shut for the season, so the heating pipes shouldn't be making tapping or flexing noises because there's nothing going through them, and there hasn't been since the end of last year. So, and it was, these taps were in direct response to me asking for this Anna. Yeah. So that was quite an interesting one.
Maybe you just felt a little bit intimidated when you went towards them, maybe.
Possibly. I was doing the whole, I don't mean you any harm, I just want to hear your story. You're sort of trying to be friendly, but I do wonder how many of the women, especially in that place, were quite intimidated by anyone. Yeah. Because, they weren't meant to answer back. They weren't meant to say what they thought. They were meant to follow the rules. And that was kind of the overriding sense I got. One of the interesting ones, though, that I'll let you in on, because I was listening to the EVP recording of it, is when Martin and a few of us were doing a spirit box session, and what would have been the East Wing part near the boardroom, and we had a voice come through, and it very much sounded like he said his name was Russell. And when I asked him if he used to work on the farm, no. Did he live at the workhouse? No. Was he one of the German POWs? Because he said he wasn't English. Was he one of the German POWs who was held there in 1917? And he suddenly sort of didn't want to talk to us anymore. Now, what was interesting is that was the block that the POWs were held in, that he came through.
Right. That's interesting then.
Yeah, he got very sort of didn't want to talk to us anymore as soon as I asked that question. I don't know for definite that's what it was, but in 1917, they because the population of the area was going down, they did actually use the East Block, or the East Wing, to hold these World War I German POWs.
Yeah.
So, and that's where this Russell, who said he wasn't English, he wasn't British, came through. So I don't know, but I thought that was quite an interest. When I started looking up the details of it, we were in that part of the building when he came through.
Yeah, that'll intrigue you as well, Martin, if you're listening in.
Yeah, don't worry, Martin, I'm doing my research. So what other sort of stuff did you find happening in the main building? Where, like, the boardroom and all of those kind of things?
We actually, by the time we got to that group, it was our last vigil, mine and Julie's, and that group was already in full swing by the time we got there. They were having a glass session, and they were getting what seemed to be a personal message through at the beginning, but this quickly progressed into a message from someone from the workhouse, I believe, a young boy. Mm-hmm. And they were very happy, just, the whole way through that last vigil, just having a quiet little chat with this young boy. Easiest vigil at night, to be honest, for me.
Did he say how old he was, just out of interest?
I believe he was about 5 years old. And I'm sure
right.
His name was Jack.
Right.
But that's about as much as I picked up, because I tend to sit back when they're doing glasswork. I don't want to be, I don't want to put words in their mouth. I leave them to it, and then I'll ask them, if they've got anything they want to send to us, what they think is worthy of the blog. Please do send it. So hopefully, if they did get something worth mentioning, they'll send it.
Yeah. What about you, Stuart? Did you get anything in the boardroom?
Yeah, we had table tapping, some good spirit box activity as well, with 4 or 5 names mentioned around the table of the guests, and the Big Bang as well. Saying when I took them out to where the machines were, we did a standing up seance calling out. Absolutely massive bang from round back where some of the machinery was. So I'm just thinking, somebody's opened door, with that loud. Went round, nobody's there. Searched for Ellie, who works there. No, we haven't moved. They'd not even heard the bang from where we were. But yeah, fantastic in there as well. Yeah, we had
Okay.
a bit of grass as well.
So that's the main building. I mean, one of the other experiences I had in the actual main building was where our sort of meeting room was, and where the toilets were. And without going into too much detail, I was sitting on the toilet, and it's quite an old-fashioned one with the cistern up on the wall with a chain hanging down from it. And I was sitting there, and I just glanced up, and the chain went from not moving, it was dead still, excuse me, to swinging quite violently from side to side. Now there was no wind, any type of wind. My mother did ask me if I'd broken wind, and no, I didn't, Mum. But it just started swinging, like not even gently. It just went straight into swinging from side to side as I was sitting there watching it.
That's very creepy, isn't it?
I didn't find it creepy though. Does that make sense?
But when you consider what the workhouse told you about that area, you know.
Yeah, so I did actually go and ask the people who were there who worked there, and they told me that would have been one of the cottages that the elderly couples would have been living in. That's what it would have been originally.
Probably wondering what you're doing in their cottage.
Why I'm weeing on their floor.
Yes.
But that was quite. But what the reason I wanted to mention that experience was it wasn't dark. The lights were all on. Yeah. And a lot of people forget certain areas of these buildings that they don't think, they ignore them. You know, like we were saying, we were joking about doing a vigil in the actual meeting room bit because it was the only one that had any heating. But people forget those rooms. And when you think of the energy that would have been in there from everyone meeting in there and buzzing because they were just about to go off and do an investigation, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. So, that was one of the experiences I had, personal experience I had, with this chain, this sort of chain off the cistern just started swinging, and I hadn't touched it. I was sitting there, it was dead still.
Well, it's quite important, a bit like what you were talking about when we spoke to you before about, just actually sitting, taking in every little thing around you when you're on these investigations, because how many people would have actually gone to that toilet that night and that could have been swinging behind their head and they've not even noticed it because they weren't, they've gone in there to do one thing and one thing only. You know what I mean? You need to be literally eyes in the back of your head and your ears open all night long when you're on these investigations, taking in everything around you.
Yep. I must admit, I was almost tempted to say to you guys, can you leave me in the toilets, please, with a spirit box? Okay,
I might well put that on our vigil list next time we go.
Because
there ladies' toilets.
Yeah, ladies' toilets. Yeah. It was quite a sort of, and I did check for windows. I checked for door. There was no wind, the kind of wind that would have had to hit to get that chain with the handle on it swinging that hard. I would have felt it. I would have felt it.
And it is a pretty well closed build. It's in really good condition. It's not windows broken or anything. No. It's all in really good condition.
No, but speaking to the managers, if like afterwards they were working out, and I've actually looked at the original plans from the 1800s, and it would have been part of the cottages. So that was an interesting one.
Yeah,
and then
it does make it even more intriguing to do the ladies' toilets next time we go. I think
you should. You should, but I wouldn't. I would do it as a lone vigil or just a couple of people. Because if it is elderly people who are in there, they might be a bit sort of blown away if like 20 people suddenly descend on them.
Yeah, but we don't have 20 people per group, Penny.
You don't. No, you don't. You have a good number in your groups. Yes, very manageable and not over the top number. No, definitely. So the next one I want to mention is the laundry.
Yeah.
The laundry room. Now, I was lucky enough that I went off. Well, I wasn't on my own. I had a couple of the other guests and Julie, who works. It was Julie, wasn't it, who came with me?
It was, yeah.
And we had the spirit box going, and we had a couple of women come through and tell us their names, and tell us that they worked there. One was it sounded like Desi, but it could have been Daisy or Desi, something like that. And also Julie picked up on someone called Alice, who started talking to us. And the main thing we got from them is they were quite nervous about talking to us because they should be working.
Yes.
Then myself and one of the guests, we went off to where those big iron sinks are in that part, and we pretended to be washing. And Julie was asking the spirits, are we doing it right? And we did get through, yes, they are. So, you know, there was interaction in there, but it was nervous interaction. Whether it's because they were scared they'd get told off by the supervisor, whatever the reason was, that was. But I've said to you before those laundry rooms, I don't like them. I'm quite in, and say even my mum, when I was telling her that was one of the rooms I was going to investigate, she went, "You didn't like that at all when we went in there," and I still don't. I still feel quite apprehensive in there. So what else happened?
Well, when I was had my vigil in there, I had a guy and a woman went off with the Ovilus, and they seem to have had a really good communication with spirit there. They got a name come through, and they also got, they got a couple of good words associated with the workhouse in that area. I think one was clothing or cloves, and then they asked for a bang and taps, and got some taps on one of the machines. You know, there was 2 washing machines with a name on. And one of them had a banging noise as well, because they come running in, they come charging in. And we said, obviously I did a quick look around, make sure it radiated, no pipe work were on. Yeah. And I went back in again and sat down again with Ovilus, and they come back and said it was brilliant. One of the cat balls going off on request, the door went off, and when we put the table where we thought where the energy was, we got a really good response on the table through tapping. It's quite an active vigil in there. It seemed to fly by, which is quite good.
Actually, just reminded me, one of the other things that happened is we were asking the spirit box what we need to put in the washing machines, and it said sheets.
Right. Yeah. So that ties up with when Stuart asked and they said clothing.
Yeah.
Told us sheets.
And then, of course, there was your other experience in the laundry where you were sitting on the table.
Yeah, there was.
I shall let you tell that one, Penny.
You want me to tell that one, do you, Rosey?
Yeah, you tell it better.
Okay, so what do we think that spirit's name was that we were chatting to? Is it Grumpy George?
I think it was, wasn't it?
Or Naughty George. I'm not sure whether he was naughty
It was a George of some sort.
Yeah.
George Michael, Penny, was it?
No, Phil wasn't there. No, Phil wasn't there. It wasn't his last Christmas. No, and he didn't need to. He didn't have to wake me up before he go-goed either. No.
I think you were probably having a whisper at that time.
A careless one.
Yeah, he is. He always has crumbs on his face.
That's an in-joke. We call Phil's called George Michael, so Phil's actually listening tonight. Yeah, I'm in on the joke too, mate. You can't escape it now. Right, where was I? Yes, so there was a group of you on a Ouija spirit board or something, wasn't it? Glass divination, that's right. And I was sitting on this very heavy duty kind of almost like refractory style wooden table, sort of listening to what was going on, watching it. I had a K2 sitting next to me, and the K2 went up to orange, I think it was, because you guys were asking for you asking the spirit to make a knocking noise or to let us know that he was still here. And the K2 went up to orange, the first orange bar, and as it did that, there was the almighty knock on the table behind where I was sitting, and it was that loud and that stronger knock. I actually felt it reverberate through my bum where I was sitting. It was like a vibration through my bum cheeks.
Well, it's picked up then, Penny.
And it was quite sort of, woo, what is that? And I did look round to see if someone had snuck round there. Well, Julie was standing next to me, but she couldn't have done it because the sort of the vibration, if you like, came from behind me, and it was literally a split second after the K2 flicked up to orange that I had sitting next to me, and it was just after you guys had asked.
we all heard it as clear as day. It was as if someone was knocking really loudly on a hollowed door.
Yeah.
Like,
But
really
it was on the
loud
table.
knock.
It was on the table behind me, because I felt the table vibrate from where I was sitting. But my first reaction was to check no one was touching it, no one could have knocked it, no one was hiding behind me that I wouldn't have realised was there. But the K2 flicked up to orange just before it happened.
Yeah, it was cool, that bit of activity, because we did have a non-believer in Penny's group, and you know, any bit of evidence that we got was great to try and sway this lady's judgment on whether she was a believer or not. I'm not sure if we succeeded by the end of the night, but I was pleased that we got some evidence for her.
Yeah, that was an interesting, especially the fact it happened just after you guys were asking for something. And I saw the K2 out of the corner of my eye go up to orange, and then it happened straight behind me afterwards. But it was loud enough that I felt the table vibrate slightly. So that was quite an interesting one. But the other thing, as well, as I think I was saying to you earlier, I did actually put those night vision goggles on, and there was, I can't prove whether it was or it wasn't paranormal, but there was a human figure that was standing behind all of you on the table.
Yeah.
Or a shape of it on the night vision sort of colouring, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That was standing above where everyone was sitting. Now, what I couldn't do at the time was sort of put my torch on to see if it was like a shape on the wall or something that could be creating it. I couldn't see any with my naked eye.
Yeah.
But that was
it was quite a well lit room anyway, wasn't it? So
yeah. There was definitely a head that was above everyone else's heads, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very strange that. I'm pleased it was human shaped anyway.
Oh yeah, it wasn't a demon.
Thank God for that.
There's not cellars though, is there, at Gressenhall? So.
Or basements, no, and it didn't have horns. No, it was all right. I think I wondered if it was the spirit who was communicating with us, but I don't know for definite. But yeah, that knock on the table. I'm glad you lot all heard it and it wasn't my imagination, because it made the table vibrate.
Yeah, we definitely all heard it. Everybody looked round.
Yeah, and it wasn't me. I didn't knock on the table.
No, I could see your hands firmly on your knee.
Yep. I was sort of sitting there watching what everyone was doing and trying to call out as well.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is one of the bits of advice I would give to anyone going on an investigation for the first time with a group, and I don't know if you guys will agree with me on this, is partake.
Yes.
You might feel like you're talking to a table or talking to thin air, but I promise you, the more talking you do, the more interaction you do, the more likely you're going to get something back. Because, you know, these spirits aren't sitting there just waiting for you to turn up and then the show begins. You need to invite them to show up. You need to make them... I don't know if you guys would agree or if you'd put it in a different way.
I absolutely 100% agree, Penny. I try to tell our guests this every week, is if you're going to sit there quiet and shy, embarrassed, you know, thinking people are going to laugh at you, you're going to have a quiet night, put it that way. Because the spirits might be quiet and shy, and who's going to get them to do anything if you're not?
Yeah.
You know, we do try, but obviously if they think everybody else around that table's just sat quiet, they're going to be just as shy as everyone around that table.
Yeah.
They need to know that everybody wants them there. Everybody wants them to come and play.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's probably the one piece of advice I'd give to anyone going on an investigation for the first, or who's not been on many, or who's only going on it for the first time, is do chat to them as though you would your friends if you were trying to get your friends into a conversation. Because, but also give them time to respond.
Yes.
So, do give them time to answer, but that, you know, they're not performing monkeys. They're not waiting for you to turn up, put your money in the slot machine, and then they start like clapping cymbals and everything else.
Yeah.
That they need.
And you just don't know how much energy it takes for them to pluck up.
Yeah.
To do these little things that you're asking them, so you've got to give them a bit of time to do whatever it is they need to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if you're saying copy this tap, you know, you don't know how much effort it takes for them to give that tap. So give them plenty time to try.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go on to the chapel and the schoolroom.
Right. Who's first? Me?
I don't mind. Which of you? You're sitting next to each other.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, in the chapel, I'll be honest with you, it was very quiet for us. We got hardly anything in the chapel. In fact, I would say nothing. Then we moved into the schoolhouse, and oh my God, it kicked off.
Yeah.
We had the doll going off on request. We had the 2 balls that would put out across the room going off on request. We asked them to work one as one answer and one as another, and they were doing it. What else did we have? We had so much happening. The door came open. When, you know, you actually heard the latch lift up and the door physically opened.
Really?
Yeah. But, you know, we were all at the time, you think, oh, well, you know, maybe we didn't shut it properly, so we just shut it again. But you just don't know if that was paranormal, do you? But that's another thing that happened on the night for us. People were swapping seats because they were sensing things around them, didn't like what they were feeling around them. We were seeing shadows. It was just, you know, I would go as far as to say the schoolhouse was my most favourite vigil of the night. Nothing wrong with your vigil. I really loved your vigil, but the schoolhouse was my favourite for activity.
All right, I don't take it personally. What about you, Stu?
In the schoolroom, we had on the table. One was a personal message, which lasted, luckily enough, 4 minutes 30 seconds. As you know,
your 5-minute rule.
Yeah, and the 5-minute rule. It was 4.5 minutes. Then I got another spirit come through who'd worked in that area, and I think we were there for about 40 minutes. We spent the last 30 minutes in the chapel, and again they got the glass going and the table moving as well, ever so slightly. And one of the dolls went off as well when we said if there's any spirit children, go to the doll. 5 minutes later, the doll going off. So quite an interesting two areas really, like the schoolroom and the chapel.
I found the chapel quite, if you pardon the pun, dead.
Yeah, they usually are, aren't they? They can be.
Yeah, I mean, this is a conversation I was actually having with George Michael. With George Mark too. We were, or Phil as he's normally known. We were saying that I do tend to find, as much as I love sort of churches and as the buildings themselves, not a lot goes on with them. It's why people say to me that, you know, why don't you investigate a graveyard? And there's not really a lot goes on in them, to be quite honest. The only churches I've tended to sort of is when something really nasty has happened to that church, like it's been ransacked or burnt to the ground or that kind of thing. Something traumatic has happened there. But most churches aren't. They do seem to be quite sort of almost nothing resides in them. The schoolroom, that was an interesting one. I mean, we had a lot of REM pod activity in that one, and sustained REM pod, like it was going off constantly, and nobody was near it. And we did do. I got everyone singing "Ring a Ring of Roses" to try and sort of see if that would cause anything. And the REM pod was like, "Do you want us to stop singing?" Nothing. "Do you want us to keep singing?" And it would go off and things like that. And interestingly enough, Mark and I both commented on that you know, round the back of the schoolroom where those toilets were. Yeah. Sort of, we could see a shadow there, but I didn't have a laser grid with me. I wanted to set my laser grid up to see it, but I didn't have my laser grid pen with me. And there was definitely stuff in there, but whether it's because there wasn't enough energy by the group for the children to want to come forward, whether, you know, the teacher had enough of them messing around and was holding them back, I don't know. But there was an awful lot of REM pod. Awful lot, and it wasn't a case of anything or anyone was near it. We were all up one end, and it would just keep going off, like it was being played with. So that was quite an interesting one.
So it sounds like we had some really good vigils, doesn't it, on Saturday night?
I think so. I mean, it's definitely... I mean, we haven't even talked about my favourite one of the night. Sorry, Rosie, but this was my favourite one of the night. The cottage. Yeah. Cherry Tree Cottage. Oh, my.
I say my favourite vigil was with you on Saturday night as well.
Was it?
Honestly, yeah.
Oh, bless you. Bless you.
I said that at the time as well, didn't I?
Oh, brown noser.
He knows which side his bread's buttered, Rosie.
It was the variety, weren't there? It weren't just glass and bits and bobs here, and it was all the equipment by the spirit box really, and Ovilus, because we didn't get them out.
Well, we couldn't get the Ovilus to work, could we? Because I said I'll take the Ovilus, and it just kept going all weird.
His voice was breaking. It's going through puberty, I think.
I think so. Yeah, I think he had a sore throat. He had flu or something. But yeah, Cherry Tree Cottage. I sort of almost as soon as I went in, I think I said to you, didn't I, Stuart? There's some because when you go into this cottage, there's in effect 3 rooms. The far room would have been like the kitchen type area. The middle room is where the fireplace and like the table set up as in a sort of, I suppose, a dining room type living room, main living area, and then the far end is the bedroom. And I think I said to you as soon as we got in, I could feel something in the bedroom area. There was a shadow moving around in there. I think I said that to you, didn't I? And you kindly let me use the noise enhancer type, sort of parabolic mic type device. And then we all sat. To begin with, I was standing. I wasn't moving, but I was sort of observing everyone, and everyone else apart from yourself were doing glass divination, weren't you? Was that what they were doing?
That's kind of seance, weren't they? They were trying tapping.
Was that what they were doing first?
Yeah.
Okay.
We were asking for tapping first, yeah. With two K2s on the table, one on yes, one on no. Yeah. And when we got better results with the K2s, I can't remember the name of the spirit I picked up on in there. Was it Robin?
Robin. Yeah.
And we got confirmation on that, and I said, you sat... Can I ask you if you were sat down and I stood up?
You asked me where I was.
Yeah.
You asked me where I was standing.
Opposite towards where you were.
Yeah.
Picked up on a spirit in the bedroom.
Yep.
Well, that was the female spirit, and then the ball went off, didn't it? A couple of seconds later, the cat ball went off. That was in there, and then we just got this fantastic K2 work.
Yep.
Via yes and no, and although there was a quiet group to start with, we was with Penny. They literally, came out of the shell. Started. They were
coming out of their shell in that visual. Yeah, definitely, most definitely.
Yeah, it was really good in the end.
I mean, some of the things that say I've not used these kind of sound enhancers before. It was my first time using them, and I'm in love with them now because the stuff I was hearing. I think when you asked me where I was standing, and I was at the far end, and I wasn't moving, and I sort of said I'm here. It was just after that we heard sort of 3 or 4. I heard 3 or 4 footsteps.
Yeah.
In succession. Yeah. And I sort of said, did anyone hear that? Because it wasn't just like pat, pat. It was pat, 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 pat. Like someone was walking up behind me sort of thing. And you'd heard it. I think a couple of people said, yeah, we heard sort of tap, tap, tap noise. But in the enhanced thing, it sounded like footsteps. And then the activity really started, if I remember rightly, after that.
Yeah.
Then I sat down because it's hard to stand up, not move for a long period of time. And sitting down, I suddenly felt my right side. I mean, it was hard to tell when you were getting cold or not because it was just so cold that night. But I felt my hand and my right arm start to get really, really cold. And it was at that point I heard sort of like a noise, like breathing through the headset. And I remember saying, is anyone heavy breathing? And no one was.
No, yep. Nobody was doing it.
And then I saw the light from the moon that was coming in under the door just get blocked out, like someone was walking in front of the door. And you guys were getting sort of yes/no hits quite a lot on the table.
Regular, weren't it?
It was regular. But then I think the best one of the night, I mean, the breathing happened more than once. And I said to you a couple of times, he's right by me. Whoever it is right by me because I can hear them. Is you cracked a joke about one of the women, you'd let them stay there till 10 o'clock in the morning if he talked to us.
That's right. Yeah.
And through the headset, I heard a woman sort of do a sort of noise, or sort of sniggery sort of,
Yeah.
like they were laughing at a joke.
Like almost a guffaw, weren't it? Like,
Yeah,
that's what it sounded like to me.
yeah.
That-
But it
And
was
it was in the in the
kitchen area.
kitchen area, weren't it? When nobody was.
No.
And we'd not heard it previously. There was no noise contamination from any other group.
No.
It was literally in that room, because I looked round because I was the nearest to the room,
Yeah.
only 2 foot, 3 foot away from the table.
Yeah.
I thought, because I knew no one would be behind me, so you have to look anyway. I think it was that.
Yeah.
Nobody was there.
No, it was good. It was good. Hold on one sec. Here we go. Yeah, no, there was no one there. And say through the sound enhancer, I could hear it as a snigger kind of laugh, like when someone tells you a joke and you go like that, and you think, I shouldn't be laughing at that. So, if he was quite a dominant male spirit, and that was his wife sniggering at the joke, yeah, that probably. But that was I fell in love with those sound enhancers. I must admit, I love them. The stuff I was hearing through them, and say the heavy breathing, it did sound like it was right next to me.
I think it shocked all the group as well, to be quite honest, didn't it?
Yeah, it made them realise what's possible. Pardon?
I'm glad something did.
I think it made them realise what was actually possible.
Yes.
And their energy was, there was their energy on that last vigil was a lot stronger than it had been all night. So it really did prove that the more you put in, the more you get out. But the main thing I take away from that vigil is you trying to nick my K2 meter at the end of the night.
Well, I have learnt Mark well.
Don't you just?
I have learnt him well, yeah. If any guests bring any equipment, Mark, just sidetrack them and put it in box.
Yeah. So while I was helping you move the table back, he tries to nick my equipment. Yeah. What did you have happen in that bit? Rosey, did you have anything?
What happened was we were in the cottages, and they all decided straight away that this group had wanted to do glass divination, so this is what they wanted to do immediately getting in there. But there was one gentleman suggested, could he go off and do a lone vigil? Mm-hmm. So I took him round to the shop, which is just a 2-second walk, literally. Yeah. Took him round to the shop and left him there on a lone vigil. I think I'd only been back in the cottage 30 seconds, and he come running in. He'd been doing a lone vigil, walked round a corner, and there was a mannequin, and that was enough for him. He was visibly shaken, but it was over a mannequin, not over activity. But it was funny. And when he came back, he got the whole group laughing, which generated that much energy that things started happening in the cottage.
Yep.
We'd put a ball on the bed in the bedroom, and the ball were flashing. So, of course, someone shouted, if that's you playing with the balls in the bedroom, which then got them all laughing even more. And the more they were laughing, the more things that were kicking off around the cottages. Yep. It was just non-stop, honestly, all the way through. Little things like that. I think the biggest secret is on investigating is have a laugh. Yep. The laughter really is a attraction for spirits.
It's the Monsters, Inc. theory. Laughter produces more energy than fear.
Yeah, it's like, what's going on in here? They're all laughing. I must go and have a look, see what's happening here. And it is a well-known fact. Wherever there's laughter, there's activity.
Yep. It's my sort of how I try and... It's why I do try and crack the jokes and sort of, try and make people laugh. Because it also relaxes people, especially people who are a bit nervous, who are not sure what to expect. If you can make them laugh, people tend to relax a little bit more. But... It's definitely a fascinating place. History aside. I
don't even think we scratched the surface on the night. No. It's so fast.
No, that staircase that I had an experience in on my own during the day when it was a museum. That's another thing to mention about these kind of places, that you don't have to go there at night sometimes to experience stuff.
No.
It can be in the middle of the day when you're just walking around.
Me and Stuart often do this, when we go around these little museums and that, when we're out and about on us jollies, we'll go and look around them, and then we'll just sit in a room and call out through the daytime.
Yeah, no, I've done that as well.
So most at museums don't mind it, but I think they don't like it when you do it net till being shot.
Obviously, we don't take any equipment with us, but I'm actually a big fan of tapping anyway. So you've got your finger, you can take your finger anywhere, can't you?
You can. Yeah, I mean, you've always got your voice recorder on your phone as well if you really want to. Sort of, you don't have to look too like you're trying to audition for Ghostbusters in these places. Just a normal conversation. Yeah. So our overall sort of feeling about Gressenhall, it's definitely one to put on the to-do list if you've not done it before.
Definitely.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, we've done it before, and we're going to do it again.
Yeah. No, so it is a fascinating place, and so I want to get Ripon on my to-do list as well. That's on my to-do list.
You've got an open ticket for that one, don't you?
I know, and I've even got a bed for the night.
Yes, you have.
Well, thank you guys ever so much for being our guests again. You're now our workhouse experts, by the way. So,
thank
we when we're going to talk workhouses, you're the ones I'll be coming to.
Right.
We need to see if we can get into that one near Nottingham next.
Well, I've got Julie on it at the moment.
Have
she
you?
lives nearby, yeah. The only reason that they won't have one at the moment is because there's so many living relatives still. That's the problem with that one, yeah. But we will keep trying.
Right, yeah, because then we can make, threes of
make
charm
it
and all that.
Trio of workhouses.
Yeah. No, I did read, actually, there's a couple of others that aren't used as workhouses anymore that I was going to mention to you at some point, but we can talk about that later. So thanks again ever so much for being on the show. Thanks for being brilliant hosts on Saturday night.
Thank you.
I really, really enjoyed it. And the chocolate and the crisps, it's always a good move. Always a good. Although I am a bit annoyed with you both.
What for?
You didn't rig the raffle so that I'd win.
No, we can't do that. You just have to spend more money and get more tickets.
Is that what it is? Is that what it is? So what have you got? What investigations have you got coming up over the next few weeks?
This weekend's one of our most exciting weekends of the year that we look forward to. We're up in the Lake District.
Oh, lovely.
A place called Wasdale Hall, which is a very rural Tudor building right on the edge of a lake in the Lake District.
Tudor looking.
Tudor looking. Yeah. In the middle of nowhere, so we're hoping for no snow.
Well, yeah.
Then the following week we're at one of our favourites, St Catherine's Old Mental Hospital in Doncaster.
Yeah.
That's a particular favourite of ours. And then we're at our utter favourite, and probably one for you, Penny, RAF Bimbro.
Yeah, I was talking to Hannah about Bimbrook. Hannah was one of the other investigators. We were talking about Bimbrook at the weekend.
We've not been for a couple of years. We've given them a rest, so I'm hoping they'll be well energised and up for a laugh.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting one. That is an interesting one. Well, anyone who wants to contact Rosey and Stuart, you just need to go on their Facebook page. They've got 2 different Simply Ghost nights. They've got the events page where you can get all the events, and they've also got an interactive Facebook page. Yeah. They're brilliant at replying to messages and everything, and they are very professional in what they do. And they've been around a long time, and they really know their stuff. And I tell you what, the energy these 2 bring to an investigation I've never seen before. So if you do, you're not sure who to go on one with, they are definitely one of the companies I can say it's worth, putting your money down and going on one of their investigations. But as always, you're very welcome, guys. I say it as I see it. So all that leaves me to say is thanks ever so much to my guests, Rosey and Stuart, tonight. And also thanks everyone for listening. If you have got any feedback on the show, please do let us know. But, well, other than that, really, all it leaves me to say is have a good evening, good night, and don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.